Could it be? With me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to In the Draft Room Live. And I apologize for the tardiness. Usually when you first start a stream, when you need to get everything set up, that takes the longest. And I underestimated the time that it was going to take me to get everything set up. So, my bad. But in any event, we here. We live. Might as well talk football, right? 2018 NFL Draft approaching very rapidly. It's now March. So, we are just shy of 2 months away from the draft. It'll be here before you know it. Soon we'll be in April, and then we'll be at the end of April, and then boom. It'll be draft time. And the combine, like I've said before, to me is really a landmark. Once you hit the combine, and then we start talking pro days, the draft is really here. So, this weekend, it's a big week, but not really, because let's face it, these players, we want to see them compete. We want to see them go out, show off their talents, run fast. Fast guys run fast. Slow guys run slow. Catch the football, yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, what do we really learn from the combine? What do we really take away? Not much, to be honest with you, because the only thing that I really take from the combine are the 40 times. And even then, they still got a chance to clean it up if they're not satisfied at their pro day. Some guys that are afraid to run, they're not going to run. They're going to wait till their pro day. So you're still going to have to wait on some of the most anticipated times. But for the most part, a guy can have a rough day and still be fine. You know, a guy can come out, run really slow, not the time we expected, go and blaze it at his pro day, all is forgiven. So we get excited about the combine. For what? I don't know. Just because, you know, we're nerds. That's what it all boils down to, is we're football geeks and nerds at heart. And so we get excited about any and everything. And the combine is just something else to get excited about for really no reason other than we're just excited because we get to see guys running around in the underwear Olympics. So with that being said, man, tonight's In the Lab Room or In the Draft Room live broadcast is strictly dedicated to the quarterback position in this draft. And I think it's a really deep draft class. A lot of guys could potentially get drafted. And normally, every year at the quarterback position, it's top heavy. And after the first 3, 4, maybe 5, if you're lucky, guys, the rest of those guys are throwaways. You know, there may be 1 or 2 guys in there that you're really intrigued by. But at the end of the day, when we look back, probably 9 guys, maybe 10 at max got drafted. And of the 10, maybe 3 might actually turn out to be good. Of the 3, maybe 1 might actually be a real franchise quarterback. We could have every bit of 12 to 13 guys get drafted in this draft class alone at the quarterback position. And I think legitimately 4 to 5 of these guys, maybe even upwards of 6, might actually end up being starters at some point in their careers. And maybe 3 or 4 of those guys might actually be really good and be perceived as franchise quarterbacks. Now, I don't think there's one runaway definitive guy at the quarterback position in this draft. Everybody's got their own flavor. You know, there are a number of guys that you could look at as the #1 prospect among this quarterback group. You talk to one person, maybe Josh Allen, you talk to another guy, and it may be Baker Mayfield, you talk to somebody else, it may be Sam Darnold, talk to another guy. It's Josh Rosen. You just don't know the disparity between who's 1 and who's 5. I mean, Chris Sims came out today and said that his number one quarterback is Lamar Jackson. You ask Bill Polian, and Lamar Jackson's not even a quarterback. So it just depends on who you talk to about these quarterbacks and where they rank. It is a fascinating draft class, to say the least. And damn, Lamar got lost. He was right in that corner, that right-hand corner over there behind Luke Falk. And we need to fix that. In any event, I'm not happy about that. Hold on a second. We got to get my man Lamar on this screen, man. He's the only brother, and we can't leave him off the screen. So y'all got to bear with me as I go and retrieve my man Lamar and get him up on this graphic here, man. And because of the omission, I'm going to put you right up front and center, my man. My apologies. I don't know how you got lost in the sauce, but it's all good. And we all fam, so I'm going to take care of the problem. And after I clean it up, I'm going to get you up here, man, and we're going to act as if this never happened. Sound good to you? Sounds good to me. My bad, Lamar. Apologize. All is forgiven. So, in any event, this is an intriguing draft class, to say the least. And I want to hear from you guys. I could sit here and bumble and stumble and ramble for the next hour, but that's not what you came here for. And that's really not what I came here for. I want to hear from you guys about this draft class and see what you guys have to say. So what I'm going to do is go straight to the comments. And I know you guys have been here. So I apologize. Make sure if you want to have your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have it read in the chat discussion. So, what up, Ree? Everything is everything, man. Been really busy, grinding, but you know how it goes, man. Nothing I can't handle. Hopefully you doing well and everything's going the way that it's supposed to. All right. Let's see. Let's get to some more comments. What up, Sean Mack? Hey, man. It be rough on the brother sometimes with these first shows, man, getting everything kind of set up. And I still need to tinker with a bunch of stuff, but you know how it go, man. I'm probably more late than I am on time anyway. You guys should be used to that by now. But I'm going to start. One of these days, I'm going to be on time all the time. But when you got everything set up, you can be on time. The problem is when you don't have things set up, that's when you're not on time. So we'll see what happens. Kevin, let's see. Well, let's keep it going, man. Andrew Kim says, wide receivers and cornerbacks are probably the biggest positions with drills in the 40s at the combine that could be impacted since this group is pretty close. Generally speaking, to me, those are along with the running back position, those are the three groups that can really help or hurt themselves at the combine. But again, you still got your pro days. So the 40 is really the biggest thing for me. You know, other than with the corners, I want to see how they flip their hips because I want to know how tight you are or how loose you are because that determines a lot for me in terms of the fluidity of your movement skills as a cornerback. That's important. Change of direction, start and stop. I focus in on that with the cornerbacks, but every other position, I mean, there's not really much to be gained from the combine. You know, receivers, they cheat the gauntlet drill. Allen Robinson, and I said this on my podcast, Allen Robinson, I think it was, what are we on now? He's a 4-year guy. So this is his 5th year. So what? Allen Robinson was at the combine about 5 years ago. I thought he had a okay day. It wasn't great, Thought he dropped the football a ton. He's fine. I mean, this guy's in line to get a big contract or at least a 1 year prove it deal that could propel him to a big deal. I thought Jordan Howard had a horrible combine about 3 years ago. So look at Jordan Howard and what he's done in this league. So I don't put too much stock into it anymore. But anyway. What's up, Greg? Hey, Greg, don't try to act like you're not a football nerd, man. You a football nerd just like the rest of us. Let's see what we got. All right. Kevin says, Allen is the best QB in this class. Mark my words. I tend to feel the same way. I'm watching so much film on these guys. And what you got to take into consideration, especially with Josh Allen, is the supporting cast. And I get it. He played at Wyoming. What is that conference called? Damn. And I know all the teams in the damn conference. I just can't think of the conference. But it's not the greatest competition, obviously, but still, it is a good enough conference with enough athletes that you can kind of gauge where he is. The level of talent around him really dropped off from 2016, where I thought he had a good receiver, a good tight end, and the tight end actually got drafted into the NFL, a receiver that he could rely on, and he had an NFL caliber back in Brian Hill, who got drafted by the Falcons in the 5th round. All of those guys left. His center, Chase Roulier, was drafted by the Redskins. He might start for the Redskins this year. So a lot of talent left that Wyoming football team from 2016 to 2017, and he felt the effects of that. And he wasn't the same guy. But let's make no mistake about it. Despite the talent around him or lack thereof, you still got to go out and elevate the level of play of the players around you. And I didn't feel like he did that. So there's something to be said about that. But I, too, like Josh Allen a lot. So we'll see. Sean Mack says, Lamar and his chicken legs worry me, even more so after the Teddy B injury. But the difference is Lamar is not Teddy B. Like, he is so more athletic. Michael Vick even said it himself. He's 10 times better than he was at this point, especially as a passer. Lamar Jackson is light years ahead of where Teddy Bridgewater was at this point. Teddy Bridgewater was, I guess you could say Teddy Bridgewater was in the consideration for a Heisman Trophy. Not the last year he was in college, but the year before he came out, he was pretty high up on the Heisman totem pole. But I don't think we ever looked at Teddy Bridgewater as a Heisman Trophy candidate per se. Lamar Jackson won the trophy and really won it going away. He's so dynamic as an athlete. He's so dynamic as a passer of the football, and you have to worry about him getting out of the pocket and hurting you with his legs so much so that his arm can do just as much damage. I really think that he's got the capability to really excel in today's NFL, because look at what teams are now doing with the quarterback position and how they're acclimating these quarterbacks. Remember, 10 years ago, the NFL was so fixed and rigid in the way that they called plays. You had to conform to play callers. Play callers weren't conforming to the player. And so if you didn't come from a pro-style offense, and if you were a guy that ran a ton of read option, you weren't going to be looked at as a big-time prospect coming to the next level, and you were looked and viewed upon as a project. That's not the case anymore. We watched Doug Peterson morph his offense into one that could have Carson Wentz ascend to MVP-like levels, and then watched him do the exact same thing in a different way for Nicholas Foles all the way to the Super Bowl. you've got to conform. We watched Bill O'Brien, who claimed, and I don't know how accurate this is, but he claimed that he had never, ever run read option, really never even thought about it, never heard of it in terms of wanting to implement it into his offensive scheme. Look what he did with Deshaun Watson. Necessity is the mother of an invention. And for Lamar Jackson, some team is going to draft him knowing how talented this kid is and what he's capable of, and they're going to build an offense around his skill set, and he's going to be dangerous. Is he very lean? Yeah. Yeah, he's got that same Robert Griffin III, Teddy Bridgewater type of build. Yes, that does scare you. Both of those guys have dealt with injuries in their career. So I get where you're coming from, Sean Mack. But at the same time, he's a lot more dynamic than both of those guys. Robert Griffin III was a straight line track guy. He couldn't make anybody miss, and he didn't know how to slide. He couldn't protect himself in or out of the pocket. I think Lamar Jackson can protect himself. I think he knows how to slide. And more importantly, he can make guys miss. So I think he'll be just fine, but we'll see what happens. Reese says, I'm looking for my Chris Godwin this year. Yeah, I remember you were on him heavy, and it was amazing that your boys actually ended up drafting him. Vincent Cole says, what do you think about Mike White from Western Kentucky? Does he have NFL starting potential? I like Mike White. I don't love Mike White. He can be inaccurate at times. I watched him against FAU. It was solid, but I wasn't overly impressed. I think he's a guy that has some traits that will allow him to not only be drafted, which he will be, but make an NFL roster and have a shot to compete, but I don't see him starting. Again, the biggest thing for him and guys like him that are going to get drafted in the mid to late rounds is you got to hopefully go to a team that gives you an opportunity, and you're looking for a team that has the best fit for your skill set. So you're open, you land somewhere where you're not behind a legend, for one, or a guy that isn't going to be removed from the starting position for quite some time. And you hope you land somewhere where you're going to be coached and you at least get an opportunity to learn, so that when your opportunity comes, whether it's with the team that drafts you or somewhere else, you'll be ready to take full advantage. I'll tell you this. I actually like Kyle Lauletta better than Mike White. And I actually think if Kyle Lauletta lands in the right situation, he could be maybe the dark horse of this entire draft at the quarterback position. Vincent Cole says, are you doing more episodes for different positions of the draft? Yes. Every week we'll highlight a new position from here all the way to the draft, April 26th, I believe the draft is. So we'll be here live every Thursday, 9 o'clock. You don't have to worry about these 9:45, 10 o'clock episodes because I'm already set up now. I may tinker with a few things, but I'll be set up. I've been working so much around the clock on the website that I didn't have any time to set this up. This should have already been set up. So I had to basically do all of that, and I didn't get off of work till later. So you know how it goes. In any event, it's set up now. So 9 o'clock every Thursday, we're going to be highlighting a new position here on In the Draft Room Live. Cloud says, I heard a lot of teams aren't high on the QBs in this class, i.e. Browns, Arizona. Could be a smokescreen, though. Look, you know the rules to the game. Cloud, during the draft season, believe half of what you see, none of what you hear, even if it's spat by me, your man Louie T. All right? Don't believe nothing you hear. Nothing. Everybody's lying. Until you can confirm the truth, everybody's a suspect. Everybody's lying. Every word out of every team's mouth is a lie and a smokescreen. You know the game. You know the rules. Play. So I don't want to hear that anybody, Arizona last year probably wanted Patrick Mahomes. That got out. You know why they didn't get Patrick Mahomes? Because that got out. And so Kansas City said, Arizona wants Patrick Mahomes. We better go and get him. So they did. So you know what Arizona said this year? We're going to keep our damn mouth shut. As a matter of fact, we don't like any of these bastards. That's how the game goes. I don't believe them. You need more people. So we'll see. And, you know, they may actually go and get, and that's why free agency for me comes first, because both of those teams may get quarterbacks that they truly like in free agency. But if I'm either one of those teams, even if I get a Teddy Bridgewater or a Case Keenum in free agency, or AJ McCarron, somebody that I really like, that's young, that I think could be the quarterback of the future for my franchise, I'm still drafting a quarterback. Doesn't necessarily have to be with your first round pick, but I'm still drafting a quarterback. Can never have enough. Wavy Jones III says, I like Lamar, Baker, and Rosen. Every other quarterback can kick rocks in the projected first overall pick. Right now, Sam Darnold reminds me of Blake Bortles. I'm not going to go that far on Sam Darnold. I like Sam, but I'm going to tell you right now, I like Josh Rosen. This is the thing with Josh Rosen. If you can protect Josh Rosen, I'm going to tell you this right now. You got to vet Josh Rosen. You got to vet him. And that's why the combine is going to be important for him, Baker Mayfield. And I said all of this on the podcast. They've got important interviews this week because you got to find out what football means to those guys. Not necessarily for Baker. He's more of a competitor. You just got to look, dude, you got to cut the immaturity out. You know, if you're going to be the face of our franchise, can't be getting into scrums at midfield before the game. Can't be getting into bar fights after games. I need you to grow up. But with Josh Rosen, you got to ask the question, do you love football? Does this matter to you? Is this something that you're going to be able to put long hours in? Do you care enough? Those are the things you got to find out. But if you find out and you feel good with the answers, and again, these guys have been coached up. So really what they say to you at the combine, you just got to get a feel that they're either sincere or you feel like they're full of shit. Either way, you come away from that 15-minute meeting at the combine either saying, I don't trust that kid, or I think he's sincere, I love the talent. And if you can protect him up front, Josh Rosen's the best quarterback in this draft. If you can protect him up front, Josh Rosen's the best quarterback in this draft. You can keep him upright, keep him healthy. He's the most natural thrower of the football in this draft, and it's not close. But when you start adding in other different side conversations and different attributes like athleticism and mobility, he lacks that. He's not deficient to the point where he can't move, but he's not Sam Darnold in that regard. He's not Lamar Jackson, Kyle Laletta in that regard. He can't move the way that those other guys do, but he can move enough. So he's got some injuries too. That's something else you got to worry about with Rosen. The shoulder cost him 5 or 6 games last year. 2 concussions this year that cost him 2 different games. So you got some things that you've got to iron out with Rosen. But if you can protect him, you're not going to find one better in this draft class. As for Sam Darnold, I'm not going to go there and call him Blake Bortles. And I was high on Blake Bortles. I'm not going to sit here. I like Blake Bortles. I still like Blake Bortles. I still root for Blake Bortles. Everybody else kills Blake. I love Blake. I want to see him do well. I have my own selfish reasons because I said in that 2014 draft class he was going to be the best of that group. So I got my own selfish reasons, but I'm past that. Derek Carr is going to be the best of that group. And when John Gruden finally gets his hands on him, he's going to turn him into a really good quarterback and keep him that way. But I don't think Sam Darnold and Blake Bortles are the same guy. But I can tell you this much. Darnold has had... I'll save it for my draft prospects one-on-one series. Anyway, let's keep it moving. Let's go back up. And let's see what we got. Cloud says Kyle Laletta and Luke Falk scream Patriots. Laletta not as much. Falk definitely. I could see that. I even take it a step further. I'll tell you, Mason Rudolph looks like he could be a New England Patriot quarterback as well. Kyle Laletta, I guess you're going with that whole Jimmy Garoppolo kind of vibe that he kind of gives off, and that's why you say that. I think the Patriots are going to take a quarterback relatively high in this draft. I think a lot of people just assume they're not going to spend a first rounder, and they may not. Honestly, I could see them trading back. You know, they love to acquire picks. They never do anything with them, but I could easily see them first 2 rounds saying, "Hey, let's just get a quarterback, get it out the way right now." They know that Tom Brady's on borrowed time, and they got to address it early. It wouldn't shock me if they went first or second round quarterback. It just wouldn't shock me. So, Laletta, Falk, and I'll throw in Mason Rudolph. All look like Patriot quarterbacks to me, potentially. Laletta, I kind of get that Jimmy G vibe, so I get where you're going with that one. At first, I wasn't feeling that one, but yeah, I get that Jimmy G vibe from him. And I think that could be something that the Patriots also see in him. He lit it up. I watched him against Villanova, and he was good. He wasn't great in that game, but the Senior Bowl really elevated his stock. I mean, ridiculously. He was good all week in practice, and it showed in the game. He was the most outstanding player. 3 touchdown passes. The guy was unconscious in that Senior Bowl, making all the right decisions, all the right throws. You got to love it. You root for guys like that. They go to smaller schools that don't get to shine, and he's one of those guys with a chip on his shoulder. Laletta is, and so he's intriguing. That's one of the guys I'm really intrigued by in this draft. Atlas says, "Do you think there's even a remote possibility Colts are thinking of trading Luck and getting a new quarterback in the draft?" No. I don't think they're giving up on Luck yet. And this is the thing. What are you going to get for Andrew Luck? Because no one else thinks he's healthy. If you're trading Luck, it means you don't think he's going to get healthy. Why would I give you anything for your damaged goods that you yourself don't even think is going to get healthy and get right? Because if you did, you would not trade Andrew Luck because he's such a good quarterback. So what could you possibly get for Andrew Luck? That's the question. I just can't see the Colts getting anything of note for him. No one's going to trade for Andrew Luck if they don't think he's going to get healthy. Nothing of note, at least. Somebody will toss you a 5th or a 6th or a 7th round conditional pick. But if I'm the Colts, he's worth way more to me than that. It's like a used car. You've already paid it off. You own it. It's worth way more to you than to just sell it to somebody else. So if I'm the Colts, I'm not trading them. I don't see it happening. That shouldn't stop them though from drafting a quarterback. If I'm the Colts, and I'm not talking about spending, your top 5 pick on a quarterback. That's not what I'm saying. You got a bunch of issues on your football team that you need to address. Running back comes to mind. Offensive line, always a problem in Indy. Receiver is a big deal these days. The defense they're continuing to revamp their defense, but you could use a pass rusher in the worst way right after a long day. So the Colts have plenty of holes. Quarterback is one of them, but you're not going to win anyway right now. Your team isn't ready to win in Indy the way it's constructed. You need to build an infrastructure that when Andrew Luck does come back, if he's able to come back, he'll have a better chance of winning. So, Reese says, have you heard of Ronald Jones from USC? This is a football or quarterback discussion. Follow directions. We're talking quarterbacks tonight, not running backs. We'll be talking running backs next week. Dre True Statement says, what's up, Lou? What's going on, Dre? Just want to know, based on what you've seen, how many QBs do you think will go in the first round, and which of them do you think isn't a first round talent? It's a great question. So, based off of what I've seen, Rosen is a first round talent. Darnold is a first round talent. Lamar Jackson, to me, is a first round talent if you're going to use him correctly. If you're going to try to put him in a traditional offense, under center, and have him drop back and run occasional bootlegs, he's not a first round quarterback. If you're going to use him in the way that the Texans use Deshaun Watson, in the way that the Eagles use Nicholas Foles with RPOs and a little bit of read option, some keepers, things of that nature, he's a first round pick. So that's 3 right there. Josh Allen is a first round talent. Does his tape always say first round? No, it doesn't always say first round. But is he a first round talent? Yes, without a doubt. His size, his arm, his athleticism, you put all those things together, he can make every play, every throw on the field. The dude's a first round talent. So that's 4. Baker Mayfield is interesting for me because the tape screams first round talent. His size, a lot of people say, hey, don't worry about that. I worry about size. I'm sorry. Everybody's not Drew Brees. Everyone doesn't find holes and crevices to throw the football through. Okay, Russell Wilson struggles to throw from the pocket. Why? Because he can't see. So size does matter for me, but at the end of the day, is Baker Mayfield a first-round talent? Yes. So that's 5. No other quarterback is a first-round talent. None. Mason Rudolph, not a first-round talent to me. There are teams that like Mason Rudolph, and he may ultimately go in the first round. I don't look at him as a first-round quarterback. I just don't. Everybody else, they'll fall in line somewhere. I think there is a first tier, a second tier, a third tier of quarterbacks this year. In that first tier, I believe you've got Josh Rosen, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. That's the first tier. That second tier of quarterbacks for me, Lamar Jackson, Mason Rudolph. I think I want to limit my second tier to just those 2 guys right now. I got more tape study to do, more film watching. I've watched tape on just about all these guys, but I'm going to go back and watch more because I want to be a little bit more comfortable with some of these players. But that's my second tier right now. Lamar Jackson, Mason Rudolph. That's the second tier for me right now. And then after that, I think in that third tier, you've got Kyle Laletta, Mike White. You've got Logan Woodside. You've got Luke Falk. I think that's where you get into. And Falk, he's intriguing. He could easily be in that second tier, but right now he's in the third tier for me. And then after the third tier, then you just got the rest of the quarterbacks in the draft. So that's the way it looks for me right now. But we'll see. Things could change as I continue to watch tape, man. The more you watch, the more things you see, the more you grow fond of guys, and some and others you start to kind of wane on them a bit. So, as I watch more, we'll see what happens. I don't know, Sean Mack. They don't actually tell me, and they determine the percentage of what it is I get. So it varies. It's anywhere from 2 to 10% of the purchase. So I won't know until they issue the reports, and they do that every month. So I'll be able to tell you then. as we keep it moving. I tried to warn you, Ree. But it's only you got to find out for yourself sometimes. You know how kids are when they get of a certain age. You can't tell them nothing. They think they know everything. You gotta let them find out for themselves. And in your case, you had to find out for yourself, man. And it's all good, man. It happens. Thank you, Sean Mack. Wyoming is in the Mountain West. I couldn't think of it. Reese says, Josh Allen has everything you want in a quarterback. He's a physical specimen. He has a bazooka for a right arm, and his mechanics are practically flawless. I wouldn't say his mechanics are flawless. Josh Rosen's mechanics are flawless. His mechanics are statuesque. He reminds me a lot of Tom Brady. To me, two of the best mechanically that I've ever seen have been Tom Brady and Carson Palmer. Like, those two guys, that's how you stand in the pocket, and that's how you deliver a football. Their drops, their presence in the pocket, the way they hold the football. It looks a little bit different with Palmer because he's a little bit bigger of a quarterback, but boy, that's statuesque. To me, those two quarterbacks, and the closest you're going to get to that is Josh Rosen. And he's the closest I've seen to that in a long time. Andrew Kim says, my quarterback rankings for the Big Five: Darnold, Mayfield, Jackson, Rosen, Allen. Mine looks vastly different than yours. I like Darnold a lot. And I think when it's all said and done, he's probably going to be overall my first rated quarterback. But I'm going to reiterate this. If you can protect him and you know that he loves football, Rosen is the guy. But how do you tell if he loves football or not? He's going to say all the right things, but how do you know? Is he a douche? I don't know. I mean, that anytime you have to ask that question, though, there's something fundamentally wrong. Darnold is clean. Mayfield's got some issues, but it's just maturity for me. I don't really worry about that too much. Jackson, to me, you've got to be willing to tailor your offense to his skill set. And for me, just because of that fact, he can't be higher than the other guys that I know can come in and really acclimate themselves to any NFL offense. Jackson has a specific set of skills that if you don't take advantage of, then he's not going to do you any good. So, just based off of that, he's going to get pushed down just a little bit on my ranking. But those are the Big Five, no doubt about it. And like I said at the top of the show, you talk to 5 different people and you're going to get 5 different rankings. And you may get 5 different guys at the top. So that's what's so intriguing about really a lot of positions in this draft. If you look at this draft as a whole, it's a really deep draft. It's not top heavy with talent like it was last year. It's really spread out. And the same thing could be said for the wide receivers. You know, after you get past Calvin Ridley, who's your number 2? You talk to one person, it's Cortland Sutton. You talk to somebody else, it's Christian Kirk. It varies. So it's tough. Same thing with the running back position. After you get past Saquon Barkley, and for some people, Geis, but Hell, after Barkley, you got some people that will take this back over guys, so that back over guys. I know some people that would take Kerryon Johnson over guys. I know some people that would take Sony Michel over guys. I know some people that would take Ronald Jones over guys. So, again, you look at a lot of these positions, after the first guy, and at the quarterback position, there is no definitive guy. At least at running back and receiver, there's a definitive guy. At guard, there's a definitive guy. There's not even a definitive tackle in this draft. Now, there's a bunch of tackles that are good, but much like last year, where the tackle position was really down, when did we get our first tackle last year? When did we get our first tackle? 20? Was Garrett Bowles the first tackle last year to Denver? Like 20, right? Ryan Ramczyk was the last pick in the first round, I believe. I think we had 2 tackles in the first round. 3 at, I might be missing somebody, but 3 at most. And I think Bowles was the first tackle off the board, if I'm not mistaken, and I think the Broncos were the 20th pick in the draft. It could be another year where you don't see an offensive tackle come off the board until outside of the top 15. It's that kind of draft. And depending on how many of these quarterbacks go, it's going to push some guys down with some extreme talent. And you could be sitting there like New Orleans was last year at like 11, 12, 13 and have a guy like Marshawn Lattimore fall in your lap like he did last year. You could have a guy fall in your lap this year that has no business being outside of the top 10, but because 4 quarterbacks went in the first 9 picks, you got Derwin James sitting there at 14. Somebody's going to get them a gem in the middle of the first round that should not be there. It's going to be interesting. Very fascinating. Atlas says, word on the street is the Cards love Lamar Jackson. I don't know if he'll get past 15. It's all about fit. And you got to think of who their head coach is. They got the defensive coordinator from Carolina. What has he seen over the last 5 years? Cam Newton. He's a defensive coach. So if you're looking at Steve Wilks and you're asking yourself, how is he going to try to build this team? I don't know. Maybe in the same mold of the Carolina Panthers. The defense is already there. What are they lacking? Cam Newton. What do? Go get a Cam Newton type. Makes sense to me. I'm not saying that's his rationale, but it makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. What up, KT? Trying to keep this specific to quarterbacks. We'll talk other positions, and, we'll dibble and dabble. But I'm trying to keep it strictly quarterback. Because we're gonna have running backs, receiver, tight end, and this is a really weak tight end group. So FBG Tony says, my top 5 quarterbacks in this draft are Rosen, Darnold, Allen, Mayfield, Rudolph. So see, he didn't even have Lamar Jackson in his top 5. And that's what I'm saying is it varies. He's got Rosen at the top. And like I said, if you ask me, and I'm a Josh Allen guy, but if you ask me, who's the best of this group? If you can protect him, Rosen is the best, and you'll hear everybody say this. He's the most polished, ready-to-go quarterback in this draft. Translation, he's the best of this group. but his upside isn't the best of this group. So that's the difference. When you hear he's the best, ready, the most ready to go quarterback, it just means he's here. And the rest of the quarterbacks are down here. But his upside is still here. The rest of them or other quarterbacks in this draft have an upside that's somewhere up here. He can't get to that. There's a glass ceiling on Rosen. And a lot of that stems from the fact that he's not the athlete that some of these other quarterbacks are. He's not the athlete that Darnold is. He's not the athlete that Lamar Jackson is. FBG Tony says, would you draft Lamar Jackson if you're the Washington Redskins after it's the first round? No. Alex Smith isn't going anywhere. The one thing you don't want to do to Alex Smith is what the last two teams did to Alex Smith, which is draft a quarterback, have him looking over his shoulder to ultimately replace him. This is probably the last stop for Alex Smith. Maybe there's one more stop in his future, but if he had it his way, this is his last contract. I mean, he would like to get another one. Who doesn't want more money? But at 34 years old, on a 5-year deal essentially, that'll get him to right around 40 when the life of this contract is up. And I don't expect him to make it to the end of this contract. There's 5 years because he had 1 year left on his Kansas City deal. Redskins extended him 4 more years. I think he's going to play 4 years for the Redskins. 4 years. I don't see him getting another contract from someone, or at least not a long-term one, at 38, unless he's playing at a ridiculously high level. At that point, the Redskins would probably have him for that last year of his deal. But in any event, they're not drafting a quarterback, not that early. Lamar Jackson's not going to last past the second round if he makes it out of the first. And I got an inkling someone's going to take him. You know how this goes with the quarterbacks. We do this every year. Every year. We do this every year with the quarterbacks. They get pushed up. You know how this goes. We sit here and we talk about this quarterback isn't good enough to go in the first round. That quarterback shouldn't be a first-round pick. And what happens? Mitchell Trubisky is traded up for in the second overall pick in the draft. Who in the hell thought Mitchell Trubisky was worth the second pick in the draft? Raise your hand. There are no hands up right now. But that's what happens to the quarterback position. Who the hell thought Jake Locker was a top 10 pick, top 15 pick? Who the hell thought Christian Ponder was a top 10, top 15 pick? Blaine Gabbert. Remember that draft? Woo! That was a funky-ass draft for quarterbacks. Remember the draft when the first quarterback taken was E.J. Manuel? Remember that draft? Bills traded up to get E.J. Manuel? Or did they trade? They traded back. Allowed the Rams to come up and take Tavon Austin, who's about to be released by the Rams. They moved back to like 15 and took E.J. Manuel. Quarterbacks, everybody wants to get theirs. So I can see Lamar Jackson going in the first round. And even if he doesn't, I don't think the Redskins are in the market for a quarterback in the first 4 rounds of this draft. If they get a quarterback, it'll be a late round quarterback, a developmental guy that isn't a threat to Alex Smith. But really, why do you even need to do that? You got Colt McCoy sitting right there, chilling like a villain, right where he needs to be, on the bench. I don't see the purpose. Too many holes in DC to be drafting a quarterback. Maybe 2-3 years from now, we need to draft a quarterback. Absolutely. KT, the Southern gent, says Laletta to the Saints would be a great fit. Yeah, it would be. And um, I think Laletta is going to be a good fit in a lot of places, to be honest with you. His skill set is one that fits. I could see him playing for Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. To me, that kind of offense suits him with the stretch and the bootlegs and getting out of the pocket. He throws so well on the move. He's so athletic. Anytime he's outside the pocket, he's a threat to tuck it and run. He can fit in a number of different schemes offensively. So, and New Orleans would be one of them. Anybody, I think, could really fit with Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton would do a really good job of camouflaging his way of coaching to whatever player is at the quarterback position. But we'll see what happens. FBG Tony says, best fit for Lamar Jackson. Best fit for Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Lamar Jackson would excel somewhere. And you know, that's a tough question to answer just because of the simple fact that everywhere that you would think he would fit, they've already got a quarterback in place. Like, obviously, he would fit in Carolina. Why would he fit in Carolina? Because there's a quarterback already there that does a lot of the things that he can do in Cam Newton. Well, then you say, okay, well, he can fit in Seattle. Well, why would he fit in Seattle? Because they have a quarterback doing a lot of the things that he is capable of doing. Oh, Tennessee's a great spot. Why? Because they have a quarterback there already doing some of the things that he's capable of doing. So when you look, it's easy to just throw out a team that runs an offense that would fit him. The question is, who would think outside of the box enough? And it's one team that comes to my mind that could use a quarterback. They have a quarterback with a similar skill set, but this guy's bigger, longer, and I think a better, more natural thrower of the football. It's the Buffalo Bills. And Sean McDermott came from Carolina. Same thing I said with Steve Wilkes in Arizona. Came from Carolina, knows what it looks like, knows what it takes to win. Would love to have a quarterback like Cam. Again, there's only one Cam Newton. There's only one 6'5", 245. Those don't grow on trees. And that's not what Lamar Jackson is. Lamar Jackson is not 6'5". He's more 6'2", 6'3". Lamar Jackson is not 245. Lamar Jackson is more 210, 215. So he is not Cam Newton. Let me reiterate that. He's more Russell Wilson than he is Cam Newton. And he's not Russell Wilson because Russell Wilson is 5'11". 5'10", 5'11". And Russell Wilson is actually pretty thick when you look at his frame. So he's more Colin Kaepernick, but with wiggle. You know, Colin Kaepernick wasn't juking anybody. He had straight line speed. And it was build-up speed. Lamar Jackson, 0 to 60 real quick. So Buffalo is the place where I think he could come in and do immediate damage because they got Tyrod Taylor, and looks like they're going to hold on to Tyrod, but I feel like they've been trying to get rid of Tyrod for the last 3 years. And to me, Lamar Jackson would make a ton of sense in Buffalo. Got a strong enough arm to handle the wind in Buffalo. They don't have a ton of talent out there, but they got Shady McCoy. Could you imagine him and Shady in the same backfield, running read option, a little bit of spread, some RPOs? Could you imagine that? That'd be a nasty tandem, right? So Buffalo comes to mind as a great fit. And then I look around and I think to myself, Arizona would be another great fit as well. Steve Wilkes coming over from Carolina. You got David Johnson coming back into the mix. You put him and David Johnson, put him in the pistol, put him in the shotgun. You let him do some creative things with David Johnson in that backfield. Still got Larry Legend out there. There's enough talent, enough weapons out there in Arizona for him to fit into that offense and be able to. And again, this is all assuming that Lamar Jackson comes in and he's playing in his rookie season. I don't think that's going to be the case. So we'll see. But Buffalo, if Tyrod Taylor stays, would be the perfect landing spot for him because it would give him an opportunity to sit, learn from a guy with a similar skill set. And then Buffalo's trying to get rid of Tyrod Taylor. After this year, you rid yourself of Taylor. Boom, you slide in Lamar Jackson, seamless transition. He had a chance to learn, and now he's ready to go and burn. So I think that would be the fit. Atlas says, can you highlight some of the quarterbacks later in the draft that could surprise, kind of like Kirk Cousins in the fourth or something? Yeah. So there are, like I told you earlier, there are a number of quarterbacks that I feel like have a chance to be drafted this year. That in past years, after you got past like the fifth or sixth quarterback, you're like, all right, the rest of those guys they're just guys. And in this particular draft, I think that you could have 4, possibly upwards of 5 guys after the first 5 come off the board that are legitimate guys that they may not ultimately be starters, but quality backups with the potential to start down the road. And so, obviously, I've been banging the table for Kyle Lauletta. After watching him at the Senior Bowl, and then just seeing that made me want to go watch some games. Watched him against Villanova. Watched him against James Madison. Again, you hear the level of competition. Villanova is a basketball school, not a football school. All right. James Madison, it's James Madison. So I'm going to keep those things in mind. But when he got a chance to play against better competition at the Senior Bowl, you saw what he did. So Kyle Lauletta out of Richmond, that's a guy that you need to look out for. A guy that a lot of people are sleeping on, Logan Woodside. All right, out of Toledo. He's a guy that I really like. All right. Doesn't do anything great. Does everything well. He's accurate. He's got solid size, right around 6'2", about 6'2", 215, 210, somewhere in there. But solid size. Solid arm strength. Not going to blow you away with any tool that he brings to the table. But they all work. Got a little bit of mobility, functional mobility, solid arm strength, really solid accuracy, puts the football where it needs to be. He's a guy that a lot of people are sleeping on. Really, really like what he brings to the table. So Logan Woodside is another guy to watch out for out of Toledo. Broke all of Bruce Gradkowski's records at Toledo, and Bruce Gradkowski lit it up in the MAC at Toledo. So that's saying a lot. Obviously, Mike White is a guy that a lot of people like out of Western Kentucky. I first discovered Mike White watching the 2016 tape of Taywan Taylor. You know, and so I watched him against Alabama. He was all right in that game. It was Alabama, so obviously they dominated them. Had a bad pick to Eddie Jackson that got taken to the crib. And that's what you get out of Mike White. He's very sporadic with the football. He can be erratic at times, and when he misses, he usually misses high. And I saw that same thing when I watched him against FAU in 2017. Guy running a corner route, wide open, and he airmails it. Safety's over there. Boom. Perfect position for a pick. So, but he's a guy that a lot of people like. I'm not as high on Mike White as some others, but to each its own. Luke Falk is a guy that I thought was going to be a top quarterback in the draft. Had he come out last year, his stock was a lot higher than it was this year. Had he come out last year, he would have been at least a second-round pick. He went back to school. It was an up-and-down year. He got benched a couple of times. It was not the type of year that Luke Falk was looking forward to having. But he's a guy with talent. You know, you go back to that 2015 tape versus Oregon. Go and watch that game. 2015 versus Oregon. And that's when Oregon was still good. Luke Falk went in there and went toe-to-toe with the Ducks. In Oregon. He's got some talent. So, I still like Luke Falk. There's a quarterback, his name escapes me, from Nebraska that a lot of people like. I'm not as fond of him, but he's another guy with a little bit of talent that has an opportunity. So he's another guy that you can look at. And again, I apologize, his name escapes me right now, but this is a pretty deep quarterback class. And that's fun. It's always fun when there's a number of quarterbacks out there that are viable options to be drafted. FBG Tony says, who's the Kirk Cousins of the 2018 draft and who's the RG3 of this draft? Do you see a team do what the Skins did in 2012 and draft 2 QBs? It's possible. It's possible. It's some teams where with the cupboard pretty much bare. Like Arizona's cupboard, bare, completely bare. Minnesota's cupboard, completely bare. Now, again, the assumption is they're going to do something in free agency. A lot of people think that's where Kirk Cousins is going to land, and it seems like a plausible destination for him. Makes a lot of sense. No, he's not going to break the bank with them, but if he follows through on what he's been saying, which is it's not all about the money, it's about winning, then Minnesota sounds like the most logical destination for him. That being said, remember, all 3 of the quarterbacks on the roster last year are free agents in Minnesota. So they could conceivably draft 2 quarterbacks, but the thought process is if they get Kirk Cousins, you either draft a late round quarterback or you go out and get a veteran free agent quarterback. There are a ton of those on the market, like they are every year. Like a Matt Moore, you go out and get one of those type of guys to have backup Kirk Cousins. You don't want him looking over his shoulder, and you keep it moving. So we'll see what happens. I think the Kirk Cousins of this draft, I know I keep talking about this dude, but I'm just so impressed. Kyle Louie. I think he's got the talent, and much like Kirk Cousins, he's got a chip on his shoulder. You know, Kirk Cousins wasn't offered any major scholarships, barely ended up at Michigan State, and felt like he had a lot to prove, and he still feels that way to this day. He's got that chip on his shoulder. I think Kyle Louie feels the same way. Disrespected, had to end up going to Richmond, feels like he was passed over, disregarded, has something to prove. The big difference is Kirk Cousins played in the Big Ten, big boy football. Kyle Louie, not so much at Richmond, playing the CAA, vastly different. Like I told you, James Madison, Villanova, those are the types of teams he's playing against. William and Mary, not the same. That being said, if you can play football, you can play football. So that's my guy that I'm banging the table for in the mid-rounds. And I could easily see a team getting really high on some Kyle Louie and taking them in the 3rd round. Wouldn't shock me in the least. But it's rare to see a team take 2 young quarterbacks in the same draft. It's just really rare because It's hard enough to get one guy reps, let alone two. So um, it wouldn't shock me though. The Patriots taking two quarterbacks wouldn't shock me in the least. Like, always expect the unexpected from Bill Belichick and his crew up in New England. Always expect the unexpected. So it wouldn't shock me if they spit the 31st pick in the draft on a QB and then 4 rounds later in the 5th round drafted another one. Because ultimately, one of those dudes needs to end up being the heir apparent at the time, and the other needs to be trade bait 3 years down the road. That's what New England does. They always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else. While everybody else is playing checkers, they playing chess. So it wouldn't shock me if they drafted 2 quarterbacks. What the hell do the Arizona Cardinals have at the quarterback position? It's pretty bad out there. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Drew Stanton, which he's a Bruce Arians guy, and Bruce is gone, is a free agent. So no Carson Palmer, no Drew Stanton. What the hell do you have out there in Arizona? They could draft 2 quarterbacks. Again, highly unlikely, because this is why free agency is so important. Expect those teams to at least sign 1 quarterback, even if it's just a stopgap veteran. You've got to expect them to sign someone and then draft another. Highly unlikely that they get nothing in free agency and go into the draft saying we got to get 2 quarterbacks. So Reese says, I think the Bucs are in a great spot at 7. We're going to get a great player no matter what. We are in prime position to get a top prospect who slips through the cracks. Absolutely. Absolutely. You're in a great spot. And I'll tell you this much. You're in a great spot to even trade back if you want. You know, say someone is infatuated with Josh Allen and he's starting to slide a bit. And Mayfield or Rosen goes, Darnold goes, and Allen is still sitting there. Or hell, let's say the Broncos don't get a quarterback in free agency and they decide to make it a trifecta. And let's say Rosen, Darnold, and Mayfield go in the first 5 picks. And somebody's like, man, I want Josh Allen. I want him bad. You're in a great spot to trade back. And even let's say you trade back to, say, 12 or 14 or somewhere in there. And I don't know the order. I'm just throwing out arbitrary numbers. Let's just say you trade back into the middle of the first round. You're still going to have a hell of a football player fall in your lap. Now, if you're Tampa, and I don't want to get too deep into team needs. Again, I'm a free agency first guy. I don't skip steps, as I said on my podcast. You need a pass rusher. And I know Noah Spence got hurt last year. You need rush. So if by some grace of God, and I don't anticipate this happening, but by some grace of God, the football God smiled down on you. And they drop a gift in your lap. Like Bradley Chubb. Could you pass that up? I mean, seriously. Could you do that? Absolutely not. So, like you said, you can use a corner, you can use the safety, you can use a rusher, you could use a running back, because you just let go of Doug Martin, and the other running back is a free agent out of West Virginia. So you got a ton of holes. You can use a defensive tackle. Chris Baker didn't work out. You're going to get a good football player, regardless. Woodland Chrisfield says, should the Redskins draft a late round QB like Mike White, Kyle Laletta, or maybe even Logan Woodside? Um, it's possible. We've heard that floating around. I don't know how much I believe that. I just don't. I don't know what the thought process is for the Redskins. Obviously, it's best player available when you get to the end of the draft. At the beginning of the draft, it's best player available. At the end of the draft, it's best player available. In the mid portion of the draft, it's, hey, we need to fill some needs with the best player available on our board at that position. But once you get to the end of the draft, now it's like, hey, man, who's the best players you got left on the board? I don't give a damn, irregardless of position. I'm trying to get value now. I don't care if I got 5 tight ends. Let's add a 6th. Is he the best on the board? Grab his ass. That's how it is at the end. And if quarterback is the highest position on the board, and you really like one of these guys, and you had a chance to sit down with him, and you really like this guy, and he's still on the board in the 6th round, maybe. But if you're the Redskins, you got receiver problems. You got a running back issue. You got a defensive line problem. You could use a linebacker. And again, free agency will dictate how big a need linebacker, wide receiver, even running back potentially is. I don't want them to get a running back in free agency. I would prefer them to handle that in the draft for the 2nd straight year. But wide receiver may be addressed in free agency, which I think they're going to do something. Offensive line could be a problem if they don't re-sign Spencer Long. With Sean Laval and Spencer Long on the market, we don't want Laval back. That's a fact. He's gone. But Spencer Long may be gone as well. Now, we like Chase Rouillet, but that still leaves a gaping hole at left guard. So if you don't address that in free agency, going to have to address that in the draft. Because I don't know about you, but the guys that we plugged in last year and the guys we had in the preseason, the guys on the practice squad, like Kyle Kalis, I don't want to see their ass in the game. And I know you don't either. So, all I'm saying is, free agency is going to determine a lot, obviously. But best player available at the end of the draft. And if that's a quarterback, I wouldn't be shocked. Sean Mack says Logan Woodside from Toledo could be a sleeper in his QB class. I already mentioned him, and he's right in your backyard, so I know you might know a little bit more about him than most people do. But I think he's definitely a sleeper in this draft for sure. I really like Logan Woodside, man. Really good football player. Thank you, Sean Mack. Tanner Lee is the Nebraska quarterback that I was talking about. Tanner Lee. A lot of people like Tanner Lee. I, however, do not particularly like Tanner Lee. But, again, to each its own. Let's see. Skipped a whole bunch of comments. So we're going to try to go back up. And get to the ones. Here we go. KT the Southern Gent says, Sam Darnold seen that USC QB movie before. Straight trash like a mumble rap mixtape. Hey, I'm not going to lump him in with the rest of them bums from USC. Like, those were bums we saw coming a mile away. Like, who didn't know? The only one of them dudes that I wasn't sure was going to be trash was Dirty Chaz. Right? I knew for a fact, 110% fact, that Matt Leinart was straight garbage juice coming out. Straight ass cheeks. Saw it a mile away. Arm strength was on 0. All right. Soft tosser. Had a ton of talent around him. He was loaded. Reginald Bush, Mike Williams, all of those guys. It was ridiculous. He had a ton of talent around him. Matt Barkley, same deal. Trash. Straight buns coming out of SC. Knew it. Everybody knew it. That one didn't surprise me. I think he may be a little different. I think he may be more along the lines of Carson Palmer. I'm not calling him Carson Palmer. Carson Palmer won a Heisman Trophy. I will say that Sam Darnold has some good traits about him, but it wouldn't shock me if he turned out to be not as good as everybody anticipates. It wouldn't shock me. Greg Brewer says, I'm a USC alum. Hated the way Sam did not protect the ball in the backfield, but he played half the season with 3 freshman O-linemen. I talked about that. And he's the first guy that I'm breaking down on the Draft Prospects 101 series. And 21 fumbles in 2 seasons for Sam Darnold. 12 of them in 2017. Lost 9 of them. Got to protect the football better. Made some careless throws. The pick 6 against Ohio State in the bowl game comes to mind. Can't do that. Can't make those types of mistakes. But that being said, the dude was running for his life the entire year and made lemonade, and some damn good lemonade. It was delicious out of some lemons that were less than stellar. So I got respect for the man. Reese says, Kyle Lauletta has New England Patriots written all over him. You're the second person that said that, and I can see why. For sure. DJ says, do you think the Bills trade up for one of the top 5 QBs? I had enough of Tyrod Taylor, less than 200-yard gains. It's possible. The question is, we know you and a lot of other Bills fans are fed up. How fed up is the Bills organization with Tyrod Taylor and his 186-yard passing games? How fed up are they? Fed up enough to come up and get somebody? Or fed up enough to wait until their name is called and if someone's left on the board, taking them then? Because I think Lamar Jackson will be around when you make your first selection. Where you at, like 22, 23, somewhere in there? Lamar Jackson will still be around. So, it'll be interesting to see what the Bills decide to do. Really, really interesting. Cruising 26 says, I think Rosen is the best QB in this draft, but his injury history scares me. I prefer to trade back as a Giants fan and pick up Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson just, to me, doesn't fit New York. I don't know if Pat Shurmur, who is very creative, is about that life of taking a quarterback with the skill set of a Lamar Jackson and tailoring his offense to fit what Jackson does. I don't know if Pat Shurmur's about that life. Maybe he is. He did some really good things with Case Keenum. So, we'll see. And I agree. Rosen's injury history should scare you. Scares a lot of teams. If you're strictly talking about football on the field, there's no doubt in my mind Rosen's the best quarterback. I've already said that 3 times tonight. But if you start adding in the concussions and the shoulder and the off the field, does he love football and is he a douchebag and does his teammates like him? You start adding in all of those different things, then you go, huh. I don't know. We'll see. Let's keep it moving though. Atlas says, forget which QBs go, which teams are drafting a QB in the first round this year, regardless of trade up or down. I don't know. It's hard to say. Again, free agency is going to dictate that. If the Browns get Kirk Cousins, if the Broncos get Kirk Cousins, or if the Browns, who I really think like A.J. McCarron, get A.J. McCarron, and the let's say the Giants, who have Pat Shurmur, decide they're going to roll with Case Keenum or Teddy Bridgewater to back up Eli Manning, and they decide we cool at quarterback right now. It changes things, right? But if nobody gets quarterbacks in free agency, like none of those top teams get quarterbacks in free agency. And there are a lot of, I told you, I said this on the podcast, it's a lot of intrigue at the quarterback position in free agency this year. Generally, there aren't this many guys that we view as starting quarterbacks available on the market at once. Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, who we didn't view as a starter last year and the year before that and the year before that, but now all of a sudden, coming off the year that he just had, he's a viable candidate to start. A.J. McCarron is so intriguing. Sam Bradford, when healthy, again, which seems like never, but still, Sam Bradford, when healthy, is a viable starting quarterback in this league. Teddy Bridgewater, as intriguing as it gets, because again, we don't know what Tedo you're going to get, but someone may like Tedo enough to give him a shot. That's 5 quarterbacks I just named in free agency that are going to land somewhere. It changes the dynamics of what the first round looks like. Obviously, you're still going to have at least 3 quarterbacks, probably more realistically 4 going the first round, maybe 5. But it's impossible without free agency taking place to really start pinpointing and locking down locations for these quarterbacks. I can tell you that 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the first round, at least. The problem is I can't tell you where without free agency taking place, because free agency is going to change that dynamic drastically. And I know you understand that. FBG Tony says Kirk Cousins, Saquon Barkley, Bradley Chubb to the Browns. Your thoughts on that, bro? That's what Joe Thomas wants. That's what Joe Thomas wants. And he's not wrong for wanting that. Problem is, Kirk Cousins isn't going to Cleveland. He's not. He's not going to Cleveland. So that's not happening. Not in my mind. Kirk Cousins isn't going to leave Washington to go to another dysfunctional organization in Cleveland. It's not happening. He wants stability. He wants an organization that is on solid ground, that has a foundation that's rock solid, ready to win, and without all of the drama. He's looking for a drama-free environment that is conducive to winning. Nothing about the Cleveland Browns says any of that. If that were the case, he'd rather just bring his ass back to Washington. But that's not happening either. So I don't see that happening. Sean Mack says, I'd love my Browns to back up the Brinks truck for Kirk Cousins. I know you would. And they probably would, but he's not coming. Cruising 26 says, how do you think Lamar Jackson would fit with my Giants? I don't think he would fit with your Giants. But then again, Pat Shurmur might be able to prove me wrong. I think Shermer's creative enough to do some things, to be able to acclimate, Lamar Jackson. But I don't see it happening. I just don't. But there's intrigue there because I think Pat Shurmur, as a play caller, would be dynamic enough to integrate Lamar Jackson. And with the weapons around him in New York, with Shepard and Odell Beckham, who was talking out of the side of his neck about how much money he wants, that's a mess in itself. But still need a running back out there in New York. With the tight end, there's some weapons out there for him, for sure. It'd be really interesting to see. I think he could fit, but again, it's all about your play caller being able to scheme up an offense that tailors to the skill set of a Lamar Jackson. And if you're willing to do that, as long as you're willing to go all in on making Lamar Jackson work, then you're fine. And he would fit in New York or anywhere for that matter. But you got to be willing to concede some things and willing to go against what may be some of your principles and conform. And if your coaching staff is willing to do that, then he would fit in New York. Because there are weapons out there. Between Evan Ingram and Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Shepard, there's enough weapons out there. So, Reed says, someone will fall in love with Josh Rosen's natural talent, even though he's an asswipe. We don't know if the man's an asswipe or not. See, that's unfair, right? Because you're going off of the narrative that was brought out by the media. He just came out and said he never said that he wouldn't play for the Browns. My thing is, if that is in fact true, you never said that. Why didn't you refute that when it was first reported? Don't let something like that circulate for 6 months and then wait until you get to the combine where you have to actually sit down face to face with the Browns to tell them, hey, I didn't say that. No, you need to shoot that thing down. Bang, 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 bang. You need to shoot that plane down immediately. Not immediately, immediately. That shit is not okay to be just circling and circulating around in the airwaves. Because now people start to believe it. When you don't refute something that is blatantly untrue and you just let it linger, some people call that taking the high road. In certain situations, you got to let it be known. I didn't say that shit. Let me clear the air right now. I did not say that. Well, you didn't do that. And he may never have said it. But the likelihood that people believe you, slim to none now. What has Josh Rosen ever done, ever said, other than the Cleveland Browns thing, that we can't confirm nor deny? What has he ever said or done to make you think he's an asswipe? If you can answer me that, then I'll take your word. But we don't know him. So, again, every time I say something, I preface it with perceived. Because that's all it is a perception. We don't know. I've listened to him talk a million times. I don't get the Connor Cook. Connor Cook was an asshole. Okay. He was the dickhead. All right. And I don't know him, but I could tell. Remember when he snatched the trophy from Archie Griffin? He wasn't remorseful for that. His dad was an asshole. He's an asshole. I don't know if that's the case with Josh Rosen. But that's the vibe that a lot of people get. Because he didn't come out and say, now, the whole kid, these players don't want to go to college. That's facts. All he did was say what a lot of players feel. He said he had the balls to say it. These cats don't want to go to class. They just want to play football. Well, 80% of the college football players feel that way. He just said it. There's nothing assholeless about that. It's him being real. So, you say he's an asswipe? I need proof. Why do you feel that way? I need to hear that from your lips. Why do you feel like he's an asswipe, Bree? Cloud says, seems like Howie and Doug are open to trading Foles. If he gets traded, where do you think he gets traded to? Hard to say. Again, free agency will dictate where he goes. The team that misses out in the free agent sweepstakes and isn't thrilled with either taking a player in the draft or thrilled with their position in the draft to potentially get a player, that would expedite maybe a trade for Nicholas Foles. But again, the only way the Eagles are going to get the kind of compensation that they're looking for is a team be desperate. And the only time you get desperate teams to make a desperation move is if they don't get what they're looking for. And so you're going to have a team fail in free agency and fail in the draft. That's when Nicholas Foles becomes a realistic option for the Eagles to get real compensation for him. So, again, without free agency taking place, impossible to know where he's going to land. But again, everybody in this game of musical chairs isn't going to get a chair. And the team left without a chair in this quarterback game of musical chairs, that's the team most likely the Eagles are going to pick up the phone and say, hey, man, I got Nick over here for a second, man. What you trying to do? Got Nick over here for a second and a fourth. What you trying to do? It's your call. You know my number. Hit me up. So, we'll see. Let's keep it moving, though. Sean Mack says, never trust a spread system QB, bro. That used to be my whole thought process until we started seeing all these guys come in the league and teams starting to conform and adjust to these quarterbacks. What the Texans did with Deshaun Watson blew me away. Now, I told you last year during the Draft Prospects 101 series, I said, of all these quarterbacks in the draft, and I'm speaking of last year's draft, all these quarterbacks, I said the one guy that I could see starting and having a major impact right away, even though I don't believe necessarily in his skill set, is Deshaun Watson. Because I told you he's a leader of men and he has it. And I said that and that alone is enough for me to say that he can go in and will a team, propel a team, rally a team around him and win ball games. And what did he do? That exact thing until he got hurt. I don't see that guy in this draft. I don't see that guy. The closest you get to that guy is Baker Mayfield. But I don't see that guy in this draft. But Deshaun Watson was in strictly a spread offense. And he got to the next level. And yeah, he made his fair share of mistakes. He threw interceptions. But he also threw a bunch of touchdowns. And it was because they made the offense fit around Deshaun Watson's skill set. And you're seeing that more and more now. So I'm not as convinced as I once was. Wavy Jones III says, if you were the Buffalo Bills and you were able to trade up into the top 10, who would you be willing to attach your job to between these three quarterbacks? Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. If I'm the Bills, Allen would be the first one. If I trade up into the top 10, he'd be the first guy that I would go after. Then Lamar Jackson. Then Baker Mayfield. Jackson, to me, in that backfield with Shady McCoy, and yeah, Shady's 30, and I don't know how much of elite Shady we got left, but while that rag still is damp and you can still squeeze it and get great play out of it, why not tag him up with Lamar Jackson for a couple of years? It may even prolong his career. That being said, Allen, to me, is the most gifted of those three quarterbacks. If you're just talking about from an arm talent, size, perspective, everything you look for in an NFL quarterback, Josh Allen has it. So that's the guy that I would be targeting first. But again, you got to sit down with these guys. You got to put them on the chalkboard. You got to figure out how much they love football, how much are they willing to put into the game. You got to figure out all of these things. And then you make your decision. For me, it'd be Allen 1, Jackson 2, Mayfield 3. Again, I think Baker Mayfield's skill set is good enough for him to succeed in this league. And I know a lot of people are like, dude, get over yourself. The height thing isn't a big deal. There aren't a bunch of 6-foot quarterbacks in the league for a reason. This isn't by happenstance or coincidence. We can count the amount of 6-foot or smaller quarterbacks in the league on one hand for a reason. Because size does matter. The linemen in front of you aren't 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". They're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and in some cases 6'7", and in the rare case 6'8". The guys on the other side of that line on defense, they're not 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". Some of them are. Aaron Donald is 6 feet, but that's rare too. You know, the guys in the middle, those big space eating guys, yeah, they might be 6 feet, 6'1". But for the most part, you're talking about 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5". Long defenders, long arms. What do you do when Calais Campbell, who's 6'6", 6'7", is coming at you and you can't see because you're 6 feet? You don't throw a pick. That's what's going to happen. Or get the hell out of Dodge. So for me, I don't know, it doesn't matter for some, but for me, yeah, size matters. So it'd be Allen 1, Jackson 2, Mayfield 3. Vincent Cole, yeah, I saw James Harden. The savagery involved in that play, it was ridiculous. I'm going to leave it at that. Cruisin says, Josh Allen, 92 yards against Hawaii scares me. I get it. I get it. I totally get it. All right, there's nothing I can say to defend that man. He had some abysmal games. All I will tell you is go back and watch 2016 where he actually had weapons around him. Actually had a run game, a receiver and a tight end that he trusts, an offensive line that was solid enough to not have him running for his life. Just look at the 2016 tape. And if you feel the same way, come back and talk to me. I'm not absolving him of wrongdoing in 2017. You got to play better. And no, it wasn't the most ideal situation, but you got to play better. But it wasn't a ton around him. It just really wasn't a lot around him. And so you've got to know that with more talent around him, the skills are there. And by all accounts, from what I've heard, the dude is a student of the game. He gets it. He understands what he has to do. And he's one of those guys that is a leader and a guy you want in your locker room. So, to me, there's a lot that I like about him. Sean Mack says, I had Ferguson from Memphis, Falk from Wazoo ahead of Mason Rudolph. I'm not that high on him at all. Ferguson's intriguing. They throw it a ton at Memphis. I just hate Memphis quarterbacks. I mean, we all saw what happened with Paxton Lynch. They don't throw it vertical a lot. You know, they got Anthony Miller out there at Memphis. A lot of underneath short throws. They don't stretch it vertical a ton, but when they do, it is usually effective. They scored a bunch of points in Memphis this year. Ferguson was throwing the football all over the field. But, again, another one of those conferences that's wide open, not a ton of defense. And like I said, with Memphis, I don't love their offense. And I don't know if they necessarily prepare their quarterbacks for the next level. There's a difference between a spread offense and RPOs and then just a bunch of dink and dunk. Same thing with Cortland Sutton. There's not a lot of route tree going on there. All right, a lot of underneath slants, hitches, comebacks, a lot of easy stuff. Back shoulder fades. He's not running a complete route tree. So I worry about Ferguson a little bit. Falk, like I said, he intrigues me. I was a Luke Falk guy. Last year, I thought he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. And he decided not to come out. And, I thought he was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft before the college football season started in 2016. And I thought he was going to come out after that year. And he didn't. Had a pretty subpar 2017 season. And now he's an afterthought. But the guy still has talent. So we'll see what happens. I'm not huge on Mason Rudolph either. But then again, I'm not that big on Big 12 quarterbacks, period. Because I can't stand the Big 12 because they don't play any defense. So, West Virginia is usually one of the few teams in that conference. Texas played defense this year. They were one of the few teams in that conference that decided that defense actually matters and is important. But, again, it is what it is. Sean Mack says, Connor Williams is the best pure offensive tackle in the class. The only knock on him is injuries. Like I said, Connor Williams is not head and shoulders above the rest of the tackle. You got people that will take Mike McGlinchey over Connor Williams. Sit there and look you straight in your eyes with a straight face and say, Mike McGlinchey before Connor Williams all day, twice on Sundays. There's only a select few positions in this draft where there's one definitive player at the top of that group, and then the debate starts after. Running back and receiver, and for some, cornerback. But even Denzel Ward gives people pause because he's so small. People have a pause. If you're just strictly talking talent, then it's Ward. But then when you start looking around at all these other longer corners, and if Josh Jackson, who's got a big 40 coming up, blazes a 4.44, a Moses Malone 4.44, looking at him at 6 feet 6'1", with his ball skills, ex wide receiver, all of a sudden you looking around saying, hey, this guy's got tremendous upside. He's just scratching the surface as a corner. I'll take him over Denzel Ward, who's like 5'10", 5'11", about $185 soaking wet. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So you look around, Minkah Fitzpatrick, is he the number one safety? I think so. And I think most people would agree, but then you got some people that will bang the table for Derwin James. So is there a clear guy? For me, there is. It's Minkah Fitzpatrick. But at the receiver position, at the running back position, it's Calvin Ridley and then everybody else. At the running back position, it's Saquon Barkley and then it's everybody else. At the guard position, it's Quentin Nelson and then everybody else. Those are the three positions for me where there's a definitive guy at the top of the group and then everybody else. So we'll see. Hell, even at linebacker, it was Roquan Smith after the Rose Bowl, after the national championship game. Then here comes Tremaine Edmonds out of nowhere. Now that's a toss-up. You got people that will take Tremaine Edmonds all day, every day over Roquan Smith. And then you got people like, hey, Roquan Smith is the new NFL linebacker. But how can you turn down 6'4", 6'5", 245, 250? 6'4", 6'5", 250? 6'2", 225. You be the judge. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's keep it moving. John Niner says, how do you like Lamar Jackson, but you didn't like Deshaun Watson? It's not that I didn't like Deshaun Watson. It was that I didn't think Deshaun Watson could come in and have an immediate impact. I said if anybody would, it would be Deshaun Watson. But I thought Deshaun Watson was so big on his first read. He was one of these guys that if his first read wasn't there, he wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. He was tucking and running much faster than slow. And he was on the go. And so I didn't like that. I said it's going to take him a while to come in and acclimate himself to NFL defenses, to be able to turn down the first read and move on, speed up his processing abilities. I thought it was going to be a learning curve for him. I was wrong. It didn't mean I didn't like Lamar. I didn't like Deshaun Watson. I just didn't think he was going to have an immediate impact. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to have an immediate impact. I feel the same way about him as I felt about Deshaun Watson last year. And I could be wrong, just like I was. And again, preface it with this. Last year, I said if there's one guy, you can go back and look. If there's one guy in the draft at the quarterback position that I think can come in and have an impact, and it wasn't because of his skill set, it was because of one thing. He had the it factor. He had that leadership quality, the ability to lead men, to get them to believe. I said he can, with his ability to run and get people to believe, he could have something. Could Deshaun Watson. And that turned out to be the case. Now, Bill O'Brien tailored his offense to what Deshaun Watson did best, which is what you have to do with a quarterback with a unique skill set like that. But it worked. If you're going to draft Lamar Jackson, you have to do the same thing. Dre True Statement says, NFL analysts have the Giants taking every QB at 2. I think they should go Barkley, but what QB do you think fits Shermer's scheme? Does Eli remain a Giant? I think Eli does remain a Giant. I do think that if you're going to roll with Eli, then you need to get him a run game. This isn't Eli from 7 years ago that could carry a team on his back. And even 7 years ago, we were skeptical as to whether Eli could carry a team on his back. When the Giants won, it was never Eli carrying a team on his back. They normally had a run game, whether it was Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw or somebody was running the rock. They had something at running back. They got nothing right now. So, and I like Paul Perkins. I don't love him. I like Wayne Gallman. I don't love him. So, Orleans Darkwa, free agent. I like him. I don't love him. So they could use a back. But, and look, just if you the Giants, just think about it like this. And I want everybody out there to think about it like this. Is Saquon Barkley a difference-making back? A la Leonard Fournette, a la Ezekiel Elliott. Yes, he is. Absolutely. Right? Can you get one of those guys outside of the top 10? Maybe. Todd Gurley was had at 10? And that was because of an injury. Maybe. But can you get a good enough back outside of the top 10? Absolutely. I was banging the table for Alvin Kamara last year. Nobody listened to me. Told the Redskins, take this man with your second round pick. I was telling teams, get him in the first round. Nobody listened to me. Saints got him in the third. Kareem Hunt, third round pick. Jordan Howard, when did the Bears get him? Tariq Cohen. The list goes on and on. And you can find a quality back. And I'm not saying wait. But this is another deep running back draft class. You can find one. What you not going to do, though, is get a top 5 quarterback at 25, at 55, at 75. What you not going to do is want to be bad enough again to where you're picking second in the draft. Eli Manning is not getting any younger. So what you have a chance to do is change the fortunes of your franchise for the next decade, decade and a half by taking a quarterback. Because who wants to draft second? Nobody wants to do that. It's a lot of pain and anguish that goes into a season that nets you a second overall pick. Nobody wants to do that. GM, head coach just got fired behind a 2-14 season. They don't want to do that again. Or 3-13, whatever the hell they ended up. They don't want to do that again. The way to avoid doing that again, draft a young quarterback. You get a chance to pick the guy you want. If the Browns go quarterback 1, whomever you deem the next best quarterback. And I can't imagine, in a draft like this, I can't imagine. You may like one better than the other, but I can't imagine that one quarterback is up here and the next 4 quarterbacks are down here. There isn't an Andrew Luck in this draft and then the rest. And hell, even in that draft, Robert Griffin III was looked upon as a great consolation prize. This is not one of those drafts where the first guy is head and shoulders above, and I just went over that exercise, so I'm not going to do it again. But you get my point. If the Browns decide they like Darnold, well, guess what? Rosen is sitting there. Mayfield is sitting there. Whomever you like, Allen is sitting there. The choice is yours. Which one of those guys do you like next? Take him. Keep it moving. You can get him back later. You can't get another franchise quarterback like this in this position again. Because when you draft quarterbacks in the second round, generally you end up with Chad Henneys. They don't normally turn out to be Jimmy Garoppolo's. They normally turn out to be Chad Henneys. They rarely turn out to be Derek Carr's. So keep that in mind. All right. Atlas says, who you think wins the Kirk Cousins sweepstake? Minnesota. Minnesota is my choice. Technically, Logic says, do you think Mayfield goes to the Dolphins? I think it's possible. I do. As I sit and I listen to all the rumors that are swirling around, and I look at the Dolphins situation, and I look at how they're turning over that roster, I seriously think that he's in play in Miami, for sure. KT, the Southern Gent, says, who is your great value / quarterback steal in this draft? It all depends on system fit, obviously. But I've got 2. Logan Woodside is a guy that I really, really like. Logan Woodside, I really do. And Luke Falk. I've been banging the table for Kyle Laletta all night long. And I think by the time we get through the combine and the pro days and the draft process, he's going to be built up to the point where he's no longer a draft sleeper. He's going to be a household name. I think the Senior Bowl was just the tip of the iceberg. He's about to go on one of these meteoric rises that's going to allow him to hear his name called potentially in day 2. Seriously. He's about to really jump up some draft boards. But who's not going to jump up some draft boards? Logan Woodside, Luke Falk. And I think both of those guys have a chance to be really good NFL quarterbacks. And when I say really good, borderline fringe starters. I don't know if they'll ever be elite or anything of that sort, but guys that can be NFL starting quarterbacks. A la Mark Bolger. A guy you can win football games with. Sean Mack says, never trust a quarterback from Florida State. We ain't even seen one of them dudes in a minute. Oh, Jameis Winston. Okay. Reese says, Baker Mayfield eats, sleeps, breathes, talks, shits, football. That can't be said about any other quarterback in this draft class. Sean Mack says, I already typed that same thing, bro. As you know, I go to a lot of Toledo Rocket football games since it's only 90 minutes or so from my house. I know you know him. I know you know him. Re-asked about Sua Cravens. I'm going to talk about that at great detail on Tuesday when I talk to the Redskins fans on the Redskins Report. Cruzen says, the only person bothered by the media not getting on Baker Mayfield. He said, am I the only person bothered by the media not getting on Baker Mayfield? Media kills guys for smoking weed, but Mayfield gets a pass for resisting arrest. It's all about, this is the thing with the media. It's all about, do they like you? If you're a likable guy, I got to start considering myself as a part of the media, because to an extent I am. We'll make excuses. And hell, when I say we, I'm including you guys as well as fans, because I'm a fan at heart. And I'm a fan just like you guys. We make excuses for, and this is in life. Again, sports is a microcosm of life. I've said this a number of times, and I find it to be true. We make excuses for people that we like in all walks of life. That includes sports. You like somebody, they do something pretty effed up, you'll find a way to rationalize it. You know? You like your mom, she comes home, she's screaming at the top of her lungs, like her mind's gone bad, but you love your mom, so you say she had a long, hard day at work. Give her a break. Right? When you like somebody, when you love somebody, when you admire somebody, you cut them a break. You cut them some slack, and it's no different with the media. You know, with T.O., they didn't like T.O., so he had to wait to get into the Hall of Fame an extra year. Randy Moss, on the other hand, who was just as big an ass during his playing days, joins the media. They like him now. He gets in on the first ballot. Both of those guys were first ballot Hall of Famers. Their careers said that. One got in on the first ballot because the media liked him. The other didn't because the media said, he's an ass, make him wait. That's how it goes. So that's why Baker Mayfield gets a pass, because they like him. He's a likable guy. And when you like somebody, you make excuses for him. You didn't miss much, John, man. I hope you enjoyed the movie. J Cam Man 99 says teams that need a QB: Cardinals, Saints, Vikings, Jets. It's more than that. It's way more than that. What up, John, man? Good to see you, though. Glad that you were able to join us. Hey, you know, I can go off tangents sometimes, Greg. And I told you I would do that. But I'm trying to keep it to the quarterbacks. But you know how I go, man. You know how I am, man. I try, man. I really do try. J Cam Man 99 says, team that wants a QB, Browns, Broncos, technically with Lynch and Kaiser, they don't need one. Yep, you can add them into the discussion. It's a lot of teams, man. Giants need a quarterback. Excuse me. Bills could use, a quarterback. There's a lot of teams definitely could be sniffing around the QB position. Joshua K says, what do you think about Skins getting Josh Jackson from Iowa over Duran? Again, trying to keep this to a quarterback conversation. You want to ask me about the Redskins and Josh Jackson and Tuesday night, Redskins Report, live. That's when you want to do that. We'll chop it up. We'll talk about all that stuff and more. Reese says, I think Julius Peppers should come to Okay, I'm going to kill that right now. Julius Peppers already said, if I'm playing football next year, it's only for the Panthers. He lives in Carolina. His family's in Carolina. If it ain't in Carolina, he's not doing it. So I'm going to go ahead and kill that, nip it right in the bud right now, Ree. He's not leaving Carolina. So you can go ahead and kill that dream right now. J Cam Man 99. So, okay, I see what you're doing now, J Cam Man. You putting it into tiers. You putting these teams into categories. So the teams you said that need a quarterback: Cardinals, Saints, Vikings, and Jets. Although I believe Drew Brees is going back to New Orleans, so technically they wouldn't fit in the need category per se, but technically speaking, yes, they do need one because Drew Brees is a free agent. Now you have your teams that want to upgrade list. Let's see. Oh my goodness. What the hell just happened? Here we go. And now you have teams that want a better QB. So teams that want to upgrade. Bills, Dolphins, Giants. So I see what you're doing there. Captain Spartan 04 says, what do you think about leading Leigh Vander Esch, the quarterback that plays on defense? Talking about Boise State linebacker Leighton Vander Esch. He's intriguing. That's not what we're here to do tonight, but he's intriguing. And if he runs well at the combine, he could potentially sneak into the first round. But we're going to keep it moving. John Perez says, any chance the Redskins take linebacker Tremaine Evans out of Virginia Tech or safety Derwin James out of Florida State? Again, we're talking quarterbacks. And if you want to ask me that, John, Tuesday night, Redskins Report. Or you can start that conversation on the website, louietnetwork.net, on the Skins Talk blog that I have on the site, and start up a thread and get the conversation rolling up there as well. JCamman99 says there are only 6 good free agent quarterbacks: Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins, Case Keenum, A.J. McCarron, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford. Matches with 6 teams with real quarterback needs / wants. That's pretty much the list of good quarterbacks. I agree. But since when do we actually have 6 on the market? We generally don't. So that's a huge number. And somebody's going to get left without a quarterback. Because not every team believes in all of those quarterbacks. So let's say I'm going to just throw an arbitrary team out. You're the Jets. And the only 3 guys that you believe in on this list are Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins, and Sam Bradford. Cousins chooses Minnesota. Brees goes back to New Orleans. And Sam Bradford, you don't trust him because he doesn't stay healthy. So you want no parts of McCarron, Keenum, or Bridgewater. So now you're left without a chair in this game of quarterback musical chairs. Now you need a quarterback in the draft. That's how this works. Not because there's 6 chairs and 6 quarterbacks, everybody's going to end up with a chair. You may not want to sit in one of those chairs. So we'll see how it goes. Hey, Greg, look, I don't want no trouble, Greg. I'm just spitting facts out here, man. That's all I'm trying to do, man. I'm just trying to live out here, Greg. Oh, man. Reese says, what are your thoughts on the Bucs hiring Brenson Buckner? I don't know a lot about him. I hear everybody. Well, he was a defensive lineman for the Carolina Panthers when they were really good. The year they made the run to the Super Bowl in 2004 when they went against the Patriots. Or was that 2003? I get my years mixed up. It might have been the 03 Super Bowl. Whatever the case may be. He was a part of a line with Chris Jenkins, Julius Peppers, himself. They were really talented. And he's damn good. He was damn good at his best. So that's probably why everybody's praising the move. We'll see what he's able to do. All right. It's midnight. We've been at it for 2 hours. I'm going to call it a night. We will end with J. Cam Man's comment. I believe that the Bills, Dolphins, and Giants can take advantage of the draft picks because the free agents will go to teams that need QBs like the Jets, Cardinals, and Vikings. And again, that's why I think free agency is so important, because of that simple fact that you got to see what happens in free agency before you can really determine what's going to take place. And so once we see who's able to land some of those quarterbacks in free agency, then we'll really have a clearer picture of what the draft is going to entail and where some of these quarterbacks are actually going to land in the 2018 NFL draft. So that was great. That was a fun conversation. Yeah, I went off on a tangent. I went off of the path a couple of times. Shoot me. That's what I do. In any event, next week, we'll be talking running backs. Look forward to having that conversation for you. Meanwhile, we'll get the Draft Prospects 101 series started here shortly. And Combine coverage starts tomorrow. So a lot on the horizon. It's draft season. Celebrate! It's Talking Draft here on the Louie T Network. From here all the way until the season starts. Because remember, even after the draft, it's the draft wrap-up series. So it doesn't stop. So let's get it. Anyway, in any event, I'm your man Louie T signing off. And remember, we changing the game over here. Period. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Combine wrap-up of day numero uno. Until then, deuces. Have a good one.